This right here is the M1 Max MacBook Pro, a laptop that is disrupting the entire PC industry by not only offering the best combination of performance, reliability, and battery life than any other laptop ever made, but also by making quick work of Apple's most expensive Mac Pro and even coming close to some of the best desktop PCs in certain workflows. And on top of all of that, the physical M1 Max die inside of this machine is quite literally the most important thing to the future of the Mac. But before I explain what I'm talking about, we've got a whole lot of fresh performance charts to go through, so before I show you guys the very important differences between the 14 and 16-inch models, as well as the 24-core and 32-core GPUs, let's start things off with how the new MacBook Pro compares to older Mac machines. In terms of raw CPU processing power, the 16-inch M1 Max is about 81% faster than the previous best Intel i9 16-inch, 70% faster than the M1 iMac, and just slightly faster than the very expensive 12-core Xeon Mac Pro. But then when you take it into real-world workflows like Xcode programming, the M1 Max is now over twice as fast as the old Intel 16-inch and quite a bit faster than the 12-core Mac Pro, and better yet, it was almost as fast as the absolute best 28-core model. And if you're wondering how that's possible, it's of course due to Apple's unified memory architecture, which is super efficient compared to traditional x86 machines. Now, getting into music production with Logic Pro, the M1 Max can handle a very impressive amount of tracks, almost as much as the 12-core Xeon, which is built for stability, and of course, wiping the floor with the old Intel 16-inch. And as for photo editing performance like exporting raw photos in Lightroom Classic, the M1 Max was around 2.3 times faster than the Intel 16-inch, and only 10 seconds slower than the 12-core Mac Pro. And if you're wondering why it's slower, it's because the Mac Pro is actually faster when you're fully maxing out the CPU with a 100% workload for an extended period like in Cinebench R23, which acts differently compared to Geekbench 5. And now, before we get into the graphics test, I want to quickly mention the huge differences in web browsing using the Speedometer 2.0 benchmark, where the M1 Max is literally twice as fast as the Mac Pro. Now, in terms of raw graphics performance using GFX Bench 5.0's Aztec Ruins test, the M1 Max basically destroys everything, being 2.4 times faster than the 5600M and the old 16-inch MacBook Pro. But when you get into real-world graphics work like 3D rendering and Blender, the differences become mind-blowing, with the M1 Max now being over 5 times faster than the Intel model. But the shocking thing is that the M1 MacBook Air with the binned 7-core GPU was also around twice as fast as those machines, and yes, it's because of the unified memory architecture. And now switching over to video editing using Final Cut Pro, the M1 Max has something that no other chip or GPU has on the planet. It has 2 video encoders, which means it can export video up to twice as fast as the M1 chip, which only has 1. But since our tests also include 2 LUTs and film grain, you don't get perfect 2x scaling compared to the M1 chip, since the encoders have to wait for the graphics to process. But still, you're looking at faster exporting than the $15,000 Mac Pro. And keep in mind that it's just for the M1 Max chip, because in this very common H.264 exporting test, the less expensive M1 Pro chip is limited by that single M1 encoder, so it's only a tad bit faster than the 8-core M1 iMac, which will probably disappoint some of you. And on top of that, the M1 Max has 2 ProRes encoders and decoders, so it flies through the craziest ProRes exports, being much faster than the Mac Pro, even with the specialized Afterburner card, which handles ProRes footage. And the beauty of these dual encoders is that they help the M1 Max MacBook Pro become the world's best laptop for video editing, even compared to the very best RTX 3080 mobile GPU, which is also unlocked in terms of the wattage since it was packed into a 17-inch laptop. For example, the 14-inch M1 Max model exported a 5-minute 6K B-RAW clip to H.265 around 25% faster than the 3080, which is extremely impressive considering the fact that the 3080 is faster in terms of raw GPU performance, and that's only because it was using a massive 165 watts of power, which is 4.7 times more than the 14-inch was using. confusing. But the worst part of all is that when you unplug the charger from the 3080 laptop that we tested, specifically the Maingear Vector 17, the GPU performance absolutely tanked, making the 3080 GPU utterly useless on battery power. And to make it even worse for the 3080, the 14-inch MacBook Pro was actually throttling the performance of the 32-core M1 Max chip, losing out on around 38 FPS compared to the full 310 FPS on the 16-inch model in the ASIC Ruins test. And yes, we confirmed that the 14-inch 32-core M1 Max throttles the GPU clock speed to around 950 to 1100 MHz instead of the full 1296 MHz that it's supposed to get, no matter if you're plugged in or if you manually max out your fans. So it's literally a hard cap by Apple. And in some very tough tests like exporting 8K Canon RAW to ProRes, the 14-inch with the 32-core drastically slows down performance by up to 36% compared to the 16-inch model. So with that said, you're probably wondering if it even makes sense to upgrade to the 32-core M1 Max chip if you're going for a 14-inch MacBook Pro. So let's get right into answering that question. First off, going from the 16-core M1 Pro chip to the 24-core M1 Max gives us a very decent performance improvement across a variety of the tests that we ran. But if you pay the extra $200 to get the 32-core GPU on the 14-inch, you barely get an improvement like in this Geekbench T-Rex test, while the 16-inch pulls ahead. And then look what happens in real-world workflows like exporting an 8K video to H.264. The 32-core literally only saved us 2 seconds. And the same thing goes for stabilization, with the 32-core only giving us a marginal improvement compared to on the 16-inch, which can really utilize that full 32 cores. And then on top of that, if your export is limited by the encoders like in this 6-minute 4K export, upgrading to 32 cores literally gives you nothing over the 24 core because it's encoder limited. But of course, the dual encoders help so much compared to the 16-core M1 Pro, which only has single encoders. But to make things even worse for the 32-core 14-inch model, we ran a battery life test and discovered that the battery life takes a huge hit when going from 24 cores to 32. So with all of that said, here is what we recommend. If you're going to be going for that 14-inch MacBook Pro model because of portability, absolutely do not spend $200 to upgrade to 32 cores because it's barely faster and you lose out on a lot of battery life. And on top of that, we found that the 24-core 16-inch model was almost as fast as the 32-core 14-inch model, which is quite mind-blowing. So you can literally take that $200 and spend it on the larger size instead, since you'll also get better battery life. So all in all, our recommendation is that you should only get the full 32 cores if you're getting the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And as far as whether you should buy 32 or 64 gigs of RAM on your M1 Max chip, we suggest 32 for 95% of the people out there, since we did a lot of extensive RAM stress testing and we barely saw any difference between 32 and 64, so only get 64 gigs of RAM if you know you're gonna need it. And finally, the reason I said that the actual M1 Max dies themselves are going to be extremely important is that we recently discovered that the M1 Max die has a secret die-to-die interconnect on the bottom, which can be used to connect two dies together, essentially creating the M1 Max Duo chip that Mark Gurman has been talking about for a while now, which may even show up on the upcoming iMac. And then Apple will also be able to grab two of those Duo chips and combine them using TSMC's new CoWoS packaging technology to create an absolute monster 40-core CPU, 128-core GPU, and 256 gigs of RAM chip that will compete with the very best desktop PCs out there. So with that said, hopefully you enjoyed this performance review of the M1 Max MacBook Pro, and if you did, go ahead and click the circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one. Definitely check out one of those two right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.